This episode is sponsored by the 5-Day Deployment Devotional, available now in my shop for download. Don't walk through deployment alone. This 5-day study takes you from pre-deployment through homecoming with encouragement and tips, scriptures to focus on each day, guided journal prompts, and practical action steps. It's 19 pages and available for immediate digital download. Visit jen-mcdonald/shop for more information. Welcome to Milspouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. I'm your host, Jen McDonald, and I was a military spouse for nearly 30 years until my husband's retirement. I'm now the mom of 4 young adults, including 1 active duty son. I also wrote the book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse. Through my experiences, I came to believe that we're only stronger together. Whatever life is throwing your way as a military spouse, let's talk about it. So, hello and welcome to this episode. This is your friend Jen, and I hope you are doing fabulous wherever in the world this finds you. Just a reminder, you can always find the complete show archive at jen-mcdonald.com, and please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you leave a 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out right here on the podcast. So here are some kind words from a listener on Apple. They say, losing my mind. This podcast is exactly what I needed. I thought I was losing my mind when I woke up one day, almost 16 years into being a Navy wife, and felt I just couldn't do the military thing anymore. It's exhausting. This show has so much helpful info and encouragement. Thank you. So thank you so much for that and for leaving a review. Whenever I see a review pop up for my book or podcast, it absolutely just makes my day. You can also rate the show on Spotify if that's where you're listening, and I believe the other podcast players as well. So today we are talking about military marriage. This is a hot topic, and I get a lot of messages about advice for marriage, a lot of notes, a lot of DMs, just people asking my advice on different things that are going on in their military marriage. There's also been a lot of discussions over in the Christian Military Spouses Facebook group lately, and so I thought this would be a great thing to talk about today. First, for this week's version of Jen's Favorite Things, I wanted to remind you to sign up for the Pillar Deployment Retreat that is taking place November 4th through the 6th. I am presenting there on the topic of helping your teens through a parent's deployment, and there are 30 other military spouses and military life experts sharing all sorts of topics, all helping you power through deployment. It's all online and completely free, so grab your tickets today. And I will be talking to Becky Hoy from Brave Crate and Joanna Gilden-Knoll. You might know her as Joe My Gosh, who are the organizers of this great retreat. They will be on the show in October, and they'll be telling us more about it, along with some of their favorite deployment tips. So let's dive into talking about military marriage. A military marriage is not the same as a civilian marriage, and so a lot of the advice and conventional wisdom just doesn't apply. For instance, you might get advice about you need to have a weekly date night to you have to communicate about everything. Well, how does that work in a military marriage if you're apart more than you're together? How do you keep your military marriage strong? Some of that just doesn't apply. So we are going to be talking about letting go of some of that pressure and feeling like you have to do it a certain way because it's just not going to work for a military marriage most of the time. I did bring this up in our Facebook group recently and just asking tips for people to share how they kept their military marriage strong. And a lot of the advice centered on communication and finding ways to make time for each other. One thing I'd remind you is when these days are past your military life, and they will be, and if you have kids and you're looking forward to the day or looking ahead to the day that they're grown, what kind of a marriage do you want at that time? So that is something to keep in mind now, to have a long-term view of what you want your marriage to be, because that's what you're working towards right now, whether you realize it or not. So here are a few tips for military marriage. We have been married for 34 years this past summer. And while we're not perfect, of course, we have learned a few things. I'm just going to kind of give you an overview of what we'll be talking about. We're going to be talking about how to find time together, making your marriage stronger together, who you surround yourself with, keeping your sense of humor, not comparing, lowering your expectations, and focusing on gratitude. So here we go. And I would love to hear from you after you listen to this. Please share with me any tips that I missed or something that you do that's unique to your marriage, and I can share it with others too. A lot of times you'll hear that advice. You need to keep dating each other. You need to make sure you have a weekly date night. Well, that can be a challenge if you have little ones or you're new somewhere and your spouse is gone a lot. I know for when my kids were little, I just was not really open to just leaving them with anybody. I didn't know, we didn't know people. Making time together a priority can be difficult. So what will that look like for you? So some of the folks in our Facebook group suggested even just if your spouse is home, having coffee on the porch each morning or at night after the kids are in bed, just sitting on the couch and having dinner together, going on a walk, even a phone call, even a regular phone call while they're on the way home from work, or if they're away, just connecting in those ways, that's just so important to do. Whatever you do, keep your marriage a priority. And remember, that is probably going to look different than what your civilian friends and family do. But that said, if you're feeling pressure because you are in a season where you're apart more than you're together, one thing I learned early on, like I said, is that this is very different. So conventional marriage advice, like a getaway, or even just something simple like a date night, it just might not be realistic when your spouse is gone a lot regularly. I always took that with a grain of salt. Don't put that pressure on yourself if you're in a season of life where that can't happen on a regular basis. You can still have time alone creatively and regularly. Sometimes the only date nights we had was when our family visited. Since we had 4 kids in 7 years, we had a lot of little ones. It was not the easiest thing to find a sitter. And like I said, I didn't always want to leave them with a sitter. So we maybe would swap with friends. Or if my mother-in-law or my parents were coming into town, we would take the opportunity to go out for a date night. So you don't have to do it the same way everybody else does it for it to work. Just be flexible, tweak it for what works for your military marriage. So look for ways to make your marriage stronger together, whether it's reading a book together, doing a couple's devotional, whatever works for you. Find ways you can connect. And that even applies when you're apart. You might pick a book you both read at the same time and discuss when you have the opportunity. Find a mutual interest. I'm going to read to you a little bit from my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse. On page 69, I said, find a mutual interest. For us, it's biking, hiking, and reality TV. Yes, we're a little nuts. But when my husband is on the road, we compare notes on the latest episode of Survivor or The Amazing Race, or discuss the happenings on our favorite cooking shows. When we're together, we enjoy biking or exploring new hiking and nature trails together. And one thing we did when he was gone a lot, I would DVR our favorite show and kind of stockpile them and wait until he got home to watch it together. So get creative and find ways that you can still connect. Another way to make your marriage stronger is to look for help when you need it, whether that is a book, like I said, or a counselor. Sarah Gates, who is one of the co-moderators for our Christian Military Spouses Facebook group, she said, don't be afraid to get outside help when you need it. A pastor, Christian counselor, or wise friends who will walk alongside you. Another piece of advice I would say is, who are you surrounding yourself with, whether it's your own friend or if it's couples? Do they complain about their spouse all the time? Are they negative about life in general? Those are probably people that you don't want having regular input in your life, and it might be the best thing for you to steer clear. So Tara House, who is actually the editor of this podcast, give her a little shout out, and she's a longtime Army spouse. She said, I'd say be careful who you surround yourself with. I am careful to keep people who pray for and encourage me, who will tell me hard truths when I need them, and who love their own spouse. If someone talks bad about their spouse all the time, that's not the vibe I like to be around. Totally agree. That is so important to look around your circle. If people are negative, complaining, it's probably not who you want having regular input in your life. So real quick, another word from one of our great sponsors. Code Wizards HQ is the sponsor of this episode. Give your child programming knowledge, skills, and the confidence to thrive in a digital world through fun and effective live online coding classes. For kids ages 8 to 18, you'll find beginning basics to their innovative internship program. Their online classes are led by exceptional instructors. In fact, only the top 2% of applicants are hired, and they use a student-first approach to teach real-world programming languages. Each coding class is tailored to engage elementary, middle, and high school students with a curriculum that is comprehensive, developmental, challenging, and fun. The Code Wizards HQ student success rate is 15 times better than self-paced video courses and tutorials. And with a 4-session money-back guarantee, Students can try the program completely risk-free. Code Wizards HQ appreciates the unique educational challenges that military families face, and they offer a 30% discount on all courses to active duty service members, veterans, retirees, reservists, National Guard, and dependents. Code Wizards HQ is your child's path to coding success wherever you call home. Learn more at codewizardshq.com and visit the link in the show notes for a 30% military discount. So my next tip for helping keep your military marriage strong is to keep your sense of humor. Keep your sense of humor. Don't take yourself so seriously. Let the little things go. Remember, you don't have to vent about everything, and learn to laugh at the ridiculous. These will become shared memories you'll laugh about later on. Trust me, I have talked before about how my husband and I both seem to be able to find the funny side of every situation, and that is so important. For instance, there was one time we were going to an event at his general's home, and the receiving line happened to be at the doorway, and they were waiting right inside the doorway. So like they were kind of waiting as you walked in, and I'm walking up in this long dress and not paying attention. I tripped right in the door, and I just broke out laughing because, you just have to at that moment. You can't take yourself so seriously. And my husband kind of felt bad for me, but yeah, we both laughed at that. There was another time where I think I may have shared this on the podcast before, where he had been gone a lot, and it was kind of winding down towards the time when he was about to retire, and he was home more than I had been used to. And so one night we were in Virginia, and my younger two and I had decided to go to Busch Gardens for like the holiday thing, and he had to wake up and go to work the next morning, so he wasn't going with us. And so he asked me when I left, give me a call when you're on your way home, or give me a text so I just know you're good to go. Just kind of out of care and concern. Well, I completely forgot, didn't even think about it. And so the next morning, we were talking, and he goes, it was kind of rude that you didn't even text me. You didn't let me know you were on your way home. I was so surprised you didn't do that. And I just sat there for a second. It was one of those moments where, you can go, this can turn into an argument. This can turn into a tense moment. And I just said, well, in my defense, I forgot you were home. And I just looked at him, and he started laughing. And it was just one of those moments where if you can be a little bit more lighthearted about it, don't just like go down that road of being defensive. And that's just a small example. So I would just say, keep your sense of humor. Don't take yourself so seriously, either one of you. That is a great recipe for a long time marriage. When I see couples that don't laugh together anymore, I think, oh, they're in trouble. That's one of those things you need to be aware of if you can't laugh with your spouse over things. Another thing I would say is to not compare. Don't compare with other couples or with each other. If you play the game of who has it worst with your spouse, nobody wins. It's just not one of those things that's a great road to go down, because then you start keeping track of every little thing. And I think I talked about this on my Q&A podcast about just don't play that game. Just refuse to. Don't compare hardship. Don't compare who has it worse or who's done more or whatever. It just is, it's a recipe for an argument and for resentment. And I would also say, don't compare your spouse to others. Don't compare them to other people's spouses. Notice and appreciate the little things that they do. And go back and remember why you fell in love in the first place. I think that's so important for us to do from time to time. Back when we were first married, somebody told us, lower your expectations, raise your appreciation. I'm quite certain I've talked about this before. And when this person told this to us in our early days of marriage, I thought, that's crazy. I should have expectations for my spouse. The problem is I thought he was a mind reader, and so I kind of stayed disappointed. I think that's so important to voice expectations if you have them, but also think about what you require of yourself. Do you respond better to constant criticizing, constant expectations, or do you appreciate it when you're appreciated? So think about this. Do you find yourself picking at your spouse more than you do uplifting? Do you find yourself focusing on the negative? So that's something to be aware of. Think about this too. Does your spouse show love differently than you do? In other words, are they like an acts of service type of person versus bringing you gifts and flowers or, nice little poems or whatever? Recognize that. Yes, you can both grow, but don't overlook what they're doing. For instance, I know that if I mention something I want in passing or something that needs to be fixed around the house without fanfare, the thing I mentioned will be on my counter the next time my husband goes to the store, or the broken whatever will be quietly fixed. And to my detriment and shame, I know that it took me a long time to recognize that that was really very loving. because it wasn't the flowery words or declarations of love that I might have preferred at the time. We've both gotten better about showing love in both the way we prefer and the way the other person prefers. And I recognize that to my husband, acts of service was a way of showing love, and it's something that he really appreciates getting as well. So it's just something little like leaving him a note or picking up something that I know he likes or making his lunch sometimes. It's just, those are little surprises that he really enjoys. And I think, these are the things we can do for each other. One resource I hear recommended a lot is the 5 Love Languages Military Edition. I'll link to that. And it is an updated edition of the popular 5 love languages. Dr. Gary Chapman teams up with Jocelyn Green, who is a former military wife, to speak directly to military couples. They share the simple secret to loving each other best, including advice for building intimacy over long distances, reintegrating after deployment, unlearning harsh military-style communication, rebuilding and maintaining emotional love and heal from trauma, and so much more. So that might be something that you might want to look into. The lowering your expectations, raising your appreciation, that leads us into my next point, which is focusing on gratitude. I have talked about this before, but when I, quote, count my blessings each day, and I find this still to be true today, it leaves little room for griping and discontentment. Remember, you have the power over your own attitude. So this is from my blog post, Strengthening Your Military Marriage. Is gratitude always easy? Of course not. What comes easy is focusing on the negative, what you want instead of what you have. But like exercising, eating better, or any other good habit, the more you practice gratefulness, the easier and more natural it becomes to turn your thoughts in that direction. Like forging a trail through the forest, the more you trod the same ground, the less effort it takes because the trail is smoother. Suddenly, you look back and realize that what was once a giant obstacle now comes easily. What used to come easily was griping for me, and now thoughts of thankfulness bubbled up. So one way I worked on this was I had always enjoyed doing a Bible study or journaling or, like a morning devotional, but I could not do it consistently. And it just seemed like if I made it complicated, I wouldn't stick with it. So I decided, I think this was a couple of years ago now. I don't know if I heard it somewhere, or if it's just something I came up with on my own, but I thought, okay, every day I'm going to write down 3 things I'm grateful for, 3 things I'm praying for, and then like a scripture or a quote that I'm focusing on learning. And I have been able to stick with that. And I make myself start with the 3 things I'm grateful for. Before I launch into any kind of prayer requests or needs, the first thing I have to do is focus on that gratitude. And that is hard some days. Some days, you're not having a good day or things are not going right in the world. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot to be grateful for, but I can be grateful for having a roof over my head, or for the cup of coffee in my hand, or for my little dog curled up beside me. So I think whether you do that or not, I think it's just an example of what you focus on is what your mind is going to go to over and over. And it does become easier over time. So I would encourage you to do something like that. So I have other resources for marriage on my site. I believe it was episode 68. That was the most recent one I did on marriage. And I will link to all the military marriage podcast episodes, as well as my military marriage blog posts. Of course, if your marriage is going through more serious issues like abuse, please seek professional help or call the domestic abuse hotline. You can call 800-799-SAFE, that's 7233, or visit their website, and that will also be in the show notes. So, okay, friends, I would love to hear from you. This is definitely a very hot topic. It's something that comes up all the time. So share with us how you strengthen and protect your military marriage. And I might use your tip on an upcoming episode. Or if you just want to shoot me an email or send me a note on Instagram, I would love to hear from you. I think that is it for today. Just remember, you will always be working on your marriage. It's something that is worth giving attention and care to, and not letting it be something that you take for granted or let slip by the wayside. And just remember, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're going through, you are brave, you are strong, and you have got this. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening to the Milspouse Matters podcast. Connect with me at jen-mcdonald.com or on social media as @MilspouseMatters. You can find even more military life support with my book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, and my other podcast, The Christian Milspouse. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and then share it with someone else who could use it too. Until next time, have a great week.